What's going on? You tell him. You tell her that train. You say, "Get home, train." Yeah, you tell him. Geez, they're old wagons, aren't they? Used to use them to haul coal back in the day. You ready? She said, "I'm always ready." Might have to sneak past that church. Have a quick look. Yeah, somebody's taken it over and lives there, I would guess. Yeah, interesting. I wonder if this place here, back in the day, was the presbytery. It doesn't look like that kind of place. Yeah. Right, we'll head off and then continue in the direction of Condo. We've got traffic lights. Traffic light. So they're still shaking his head. I don't know what to say. You mustn't feel like a chap, the young fella. There you go, mate. New bridge by the looks of it. That Bailey bridge back there was a bit of a shocker, wasn't it? There you go, any blokes. That's right. Now where's he off to, I wonder? I keep going on about it being a winter's day, and haven't even bothered to turn the heated grips on yet. Probably because we're not going fast enough to get too much wind chill. churches, you know, like a lot of little country churches like that all over the place in Australia. Used to serve small communities, and now I don't know what the philosophy behind it is, you know. The church is just saving money. They're not going to send a priest out to live out in the bush anymore. I suppose they've got enough trouble attracting, you know, employees, shall we say, as it is, let alone, you know, saying, okay, you're a priest, now you can go and live in this place where there isn't even a shop. So they sold a lot of them off. And I've seen them for sale from, you know, finger at a Bajerabong sort of thing. Anyway, I was talking about that girl with the TX500. She, yeah, she gets around on that, gives it a bit of a thrashing, which is, you know, what they're built for. I can remember those bikes from the 70s, and they weren't the most popular of bikes. There was like that one, the TX500, and the TX750, which was another parallel twin, and I think it was a 360 degrees parallel twin too, like Triumphs, you know. And then there was the TX650 or the XS650 as well. And the TX and XS650s, they were the most popular. The 750 had a reputation, and so did the TX500. Had a bit of a reputation as hand grenades. People used to blow them up. So they say. I mean, I never saw one blown up. But I guess, like most bikes, you know, there are a lot of you know, myths and legends about motorcycles, reliability, problems they had, etc., etc. You know, like that 860 Ducati I had, it had a reputation for throwing the crank. And so it's possibly true, but the one I had never had any issues. But it had, its crank pin had been replaced with the Dharma one, so it had been modified, you know, and that apparently was the fix for that. Yeah, BSA A65s had a reputation for throwing bottom ends as well, but they don't do it anymore. You know, just better engineering these days, better parts, whatnot. Anyway, she's also got a 90, I think it was a 93 model GT175 Yamaha trail bike, you know, and she was out riding it, and she has to mix the fuel for it. Whoever owned it before her had given her a major rebuild and a rework, and discontinued the oiler, you know, so she has to mix her own fuel before she goes, which could be a bit of a pain in the arse, I suppose, particularly if you're travelling a long distance. Well, you know, I suppose all you got to do is take a bottle of two-stroke oil and stop and fill it up, and then just mix it in there at the servo. More traffic. What do you do, eh? The Lachlan Shire. I'm in the Parkshire, which is apparently the worst one to be in for bureaucracy and stuff. People say, if you're going to do something, just don't tell them. What's going on? What's the moo cows? That's probably why they put the reduced speed sign up. It's a bit sharper than it looks. Stop it. Stop it. Like a cockies. It's actually a pretty pleasant trip along here, this road. So I got this old friend in Leipzig. Well, she's not in Leipzig anymore. I used to teach her English in Leipzig, Martina, and you know, this is, I've known her for 35 years or whatever, a bit more maybe. And you know, we've always kept in contact over the years, and met up with her for, I actually met up with her for coffee and ice cream the last time I was in Leipzig, which is 2023. It's already, you know, 3 years ago. And I met her partner, his name is Gieselhauer. What's this bloke up to, and how wide is he? And he was an interesting bloke. Interesting bloke, you know, like, they were childhood sweethearts, but didn't get together until later in life, you know. And oh, got him. And he was an interesting bloke, yeah, you know, he's from Dresden originally, or near Dresden, and during the GDR times he was a fighter pilot with the NVR, the Nationale Volksarmee, you know, and flew MiGs 29s and stuff, you know. And then after the wall came down, he oh, I don't know what he did a lot of the time, but he, interesting, ended up flying police helicopters. So at some stage he switched from the military to the police. Anyway, they got together, and Martina lived in London for, well, it must be nearly 30 years, or lived in London and also Cape Town, and I think Singapore, over that period of 30 years, and we'd just catch up, you know, if we happen to be in the same part of the world or whatever. And anyway, they got together, and Gizzy, everyone calls him Gizzy. He built a really nice house in a village outside Dresden, and Martina got herself a job in Berlin, so she goes to Berlin 3 days a week from near Dresden, you know. I don't know whether she drives or catches the train or what. Don't know. You might fly. I wouldn't have a clue. You could probably fly from Dresden to Tegel or somewhere. Temple Hall. Anyway, they get everything sorted. Gizzy gets cancer and dies within months, you know, leaving Martina, having moved over from England to near Dresden, in this massive house. Like, it's one of the old Dacia kind of places that, you know, a couple of stories, a couple of bathrooms, lots of bedrooms, etc, etc. Lovely place too. He did a really good job with it, you know. And but she, you know, rattles around in it because it's so big, and she's a little woman too. Like, she's only quite petite, and now she's like, well, what am I going to do now? You know, 'cause no, and he was, you know, he was, you know, her big love sort of thing, you know. Anyway, I was been communicating with her a bit, you know, since his death, you know, just to check on her every now and again and stuff. And she's going, oh look, you know, why don't you come over and come and stay with me for a while? You can stay as long as you like, pick a bedroom and, you know, stay for a year or whatever. Stay for the rest of your life if you want to. And I, you know, gee, I'm sort of tempted. I'm sort of, you know, 10 years ago or whatever, I'd have been already on the way. As I love Germany, or the east of Germany anyway. Don't like the west much, but the east is great. That's my Germany, you know, the one I'm used to. You notice I just switched my head heater grips on. It's actually getting a bit chilly. A bit. Put that camera there and haven't used it. Reaffix that heater grip. Anyway, the obstacles in the way, of course, are, you know, I live in that bush shack in an abandoned village where no one lives except me. I couldn't, what would I do with Tilly, and what would I do with Keith? You know, poor old Keith, he loves it there, and he just wouldn't adapt anywhere else. And Tilly, you know, she's semi-feral, and they can do what they like, you know. I can't really leave them, you know, nor do I want to, in that respect. Plus, you know, I'm getting older, not that young bloke anymore. That kind of international travel, the last trip I did, you know, 3 years ago, I found it actually fairly stressful, but there was a lot of stuff going on too. That was, you know, with my breakup with Kerry and that kind of stuff, and had difficulty staying there in Germany because of, I was going to actually stay and work, you know, but I couldn't get a work visa because the place is just overrun with refugees from the Ukraine and Syria, etc. And the whole face of Leipzig had changed completely. This bloke stolen an irrigation channel wheel from somewhere. No, I suppose the Riverina's not far. I better remind myself to get some petrol when we get to Condo. Just so we've got some in the tank when we get home. Wanted to look at the sign and got distracted by the bridge. No, jedenfalls müssen wir mal sehen. Warten wir erstmal ab, ja. Who knows? maybe one day, a couple of years down the track, when I'm a pensioner, I can probably go and stay for 6 months and pick up my language skills again and stuff. I don't know. We'll see. Seems unlikely. Sun peaks out again. So it's quite a nice ride into Condobolin from here, though of course you wouldn't do it if you're in a hurry to pick up the bread and milk. But we're in the country. We're not in a hurry. That's the point of it, isn't it? Now that girl whose name I've completely forgotten, the alchemistic, she was talking about the idea of finding your people, and it has to be said, she they're fairly wise words in a way for someone so young. She'd only be in her 20s, I suppose. Hard to tell. But she sort of, you know, just fair to the fact that she was just different than everybody else. And, you know, she'd never find her own tribe or her own kind of people, or, you know, in the world. And, you know, a lot of people feel that way, and I felt that way. I still feel that way, and it's not easy, and it's taken me a long time to recognise that you're not the same and you don't fit in or whatever. It took me a lot longer than it did her. Having said that, you know, my best friends are my oldest friends. You know, blokes I've known since I was 10 or 11 years old, you know. Went to school together and played footy together and cricket together and stuff. Must be some kind of stand pump or something. I've hit a couple of large birds on bikes over the years. That can be quite a meeting, quite an impact. Oh, we've got more sculptures, have we? What have we got? I wonder what's going on with these sculptures on this road. Well, as we're having a sculpture day, we might as well have a quick look if it's not too far. But then she's finding, you know, this girl as she goes along, that there are her people in the world, you know. You just got to give it time. Wo sind die Skulpturen? Wo findet man die? Also da oder was? Yeah, well, what can I say? I don't know what to say about this. I'm going to have to read the instructions again. I don't know much about art, but I know what I like, etc. Strange business. Well, we might take the opportunity to change the battery in the camera. Mal gucken, ja, bis wir wieder aussteigen, ja? Kannst du machen. You can pop out, can't you? Have a bit of a look. A bit of a lickety look. See if there's any Germans. Давай. Хорошо.